Imagine capturing a fleet of your enemy's most advanced fighter jets, bringing them back to base, and then being ordered by your commanding officer to just set them on fire right there on the runway.
Yeah, it makes absolute zero sense strategically.
Right. I mean, welcome to the deep dive. I want to start off today by warmly welcoming you and offering a divine blessing for your day and for the entire week ahead. May you find clarity, strength, and purpose in whatever obstacles you're facing right now.
That's a great way to start, especially because, we are looking at a historical text today where clarity and purpose are tested under the most extreme pressure imaginable.
Absolutely.
We're exploring this moment where doing the strategically smart thing was, well, completely at odds with doing the commanded thing.
Yeah, so we are diving deep into Joshua chapter 11 today, and we're drawing our insights from the Holman and NAA study Bibles.
Right?
And for a long time, I viewed this chapter as just another ancient battle log, just a list of unpronounceable names and places.
Oh, for sure. It can definitely read that way at first glance.
But digging into these sources reveals, the ultimate underdog story. We're talking about massive geopolitical alliances, a sprawling 200-acre ancient megacity, banned military technology, and actual literal giants.
It's wild. Historians actually call this the Northern Campaign, and it serves as the climax of the Israelites' conquest of Canaan.
The grand finale, basically.
Exactly. And it forces this fundamental question upon a newly emerging nation. Will Israel rely on their own rapidly growing military strength, or will they maintain their foundational dependence on their faith?
Which is such a timeless question.
Right.
But to understand the sheer scale of the victory here, we first have to understand the terrifying scale of the enemy they were up against.
Yeah, the text sets up a massive threat.
Right, so it introduces a leader named Gibeon, the king of a city called Hazor. Gibeon hears about Israel's previous victories down in the southern region.
And he decides he's not going to just wait around for this threat to reach his doorstep.
Exactly, so he forms a massive, multinational northern coalition.
And the study notes point out a really critical historical detail about this leader. So Jabin is highly unlikely to be a personal first name.
Wait, really? It's not his name?
No, in the context of ancient Near Eastern politics, it functioned as a dynastic title.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, similar to how Pharaoh was used in Egypt, or, Caesar in Rome. Jabin is a Semitic term that translates roughly to he builds.
He builds, wow.
Right. It denotes a long lineage of builder kings who had constructed something truly formidable in the region.
And according to the archaeological records cited in our sources, what they built in Hazor wasn't just a typical ancient town.
Not at all.
It was the undisputed metropolis of the entire region. The sources describe it as a sprawling 200-acre megacity.
Which is massive for that era.
Yeah. To put that in perspective, in the Bronze Age, a 200-acre walled city is like the equivalent of a modern Manhattan.
Right. It was the absolute hub.
It dominated the trade routes stretching all the way up to the Euphrates River. The biblical text literally designates it as the head of all those kingdoms.
Yeah. Hazor acted as the political and economic center of gravity for the entire region of Syria-Palestine.
So it's a superpower.
Exactly. So when this king of Hazor sends out messengers to the kings of the surrounding mountains, the plains, and the coast, he isn't just making a polite request for military aid.
He's not asking for a favor.
No. He is calling in his banners. He's demanding that his vassal states supply troops.
So Jabin snaps his fingers, and suddenly there is a unified multinational army bearing down on Joshua and the Israelites.
A huge one.
Yeah, the text uses this incredibly evocative phrase, describing their gathered armies as a multitude, like the sand on the seashore.
Which is just a terrifying image.
I mean, if you were an Israelite soldier standing on a ridge, you're looking out at a horizon that's just completely darkened by enemy troops.
Right. But overwhelming numbers were only part of the threat here.
Oh, yeah, the technology.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This coalition brought cutting-edge military technology to the battlefield. The sources highlight that they fielded multitudes of horses and chariots.
Which were basically the tanks of the ancient world. But I want to understand the mechanics of why they were so devastating. I mean, I imagine an infantry-based force like the Israelites fighting chariots is just a complete mismatch.
Oh, it's totally asymmetric warfare. The technological leap here is staggering. We aren't talking about heavy, slow transport carts.
Okay, so what did they look like?
Well, the chariots from this specific era, the late Bronze Age, featured a revolutionary design. They used four-spoked wheels rather than the older solid wood or six-spoked designs.
Oh, so they were a lot lighter.
Way lighter. This drastic reduction in weight allowed two horses to pull the chariot at incredibly high speeds. They essentially functioned as mobile firing platforms.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so a driver steered the horses while an archer stood beside him, raining down arrows while moving far too fast for foot soldiers to counterattack or, honestly, even retreat.
That sounds like a nightmare for infantry.
It was. If an infantry force faces massed chariotry on open, flat ground, the chariots can simply run wide flanking maneuvers, encircle the infantry, and systematically dismantle them from a distance.
So they're outnumbered, outgunned, and staring down the barrel of the region's most advanced military tech.
Right.
And this brings us to the battle plan God gives to Joshua, which, quite frankly, absolutely defies all conventional military logic.
It really does.
God tells Joshua to not just defeat this coalition, but afterward, he must hamstring their horses and burn their chariots.
Yeah.
Now, wait, let me push back on this a little bit, because my modern brain completely rebels at this strategy.
I think most people's brains do.
Right, because you are an underdog, grassroots army. By some absolute miracle, you managed to defeat this superpower and capture their highly advanced tech.
Which is the dream scenario for an underdog.
Exactly. Why in the world would you not keep those chariots for your own defense? Integrating the horses into your own military seems like the only logical way to secure your borders moving forward.
Yeah, from a worldly perspective, absolutely.
Destroying them just feels like a catastrophic waste of resources.
I get that. And from a purely tactical and geopolitical standpoint, it sounds absurd. But the NWA and Holman study notes provide the necessary synthesis to understand the underlying mechanism of this command.
Okay, Leon.
So first, let's look at the physical action. Hamstringing a horse involves severing a specific tendon in his back leg.
So it doesn't kill the animal.
No, it doesn't kill it, but it permanently alters its biomechanics. It renders the horse completely unable to bear the weight of a chariot or a rider in the explosive high-stress environment of a battle.
Wow, so it effectively neuters the war machine.
Precisely. The horse becomes an agricultural animal pulling a slow plow, but it is rendered absolutely useless for a cavalry charge.
That is fascinating.
And by combining that with the burning of the chariots, Israel is being forced into a position of continued dependence. They are explicitly forbidden from entering into a regional arms race. Yeah, the sources link this command directly back to a very specific regulation laid out by Moses earlier in Deuteronomy chapter 17.
Okay, what was the rule?
That law strictly prohibited the future kings of Israel from accumulating large numbers of horses.
Because accumulating the weapons actually changes your psychology.
Exactly.
If you build up a massive fleet of chariots, you inevitably start trusting those chariots. You start believing that your security is derived from your superior firepower rather than your covenant with God.
You nailed it. It is a physical, systematic dismantling of self-reliance. It forces the Israelites to remember that their survival doesn't come from matching the enemy's technology.
Right.
It removes the temptation to become the very thing they are fighting against.
So you literally burn the thing that could make you conventionally powerful to ensure you remain unconventionally faithful.
That's a great way to put it.
So with that radical strategy in place, Joshua doesn't wait for this massive chariot force to find him on open ground. He actually launches a surprise attack at a location called the Waters of Merom.
Which is a crucial detail. The location and timing are critical here.
Why is that?
Because chariots require flat, dry ground to maneuver effectively. By attacking at the Waters of Merom, which was likely a marshy or hilly area near a water source, Joshua completely neutralizes their technological advantage.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah. Furthermore, the study notes clarify that this conflict was fundamentally a defensive war.
Okay, elaborate on that.
Well, Israel is preemptively striking a massive, coordinated coalition that had actively gathered with the stated goal of annihilating them.
So they weren't just picking a fight.
No, they were defending their very existence.
Right, so Joshua catches them off guard. The battle turns into a total rout. The Israelites chase the coalition of forces for miles, completely fracturing this massive army.
Yeah, it's a decisive victory.
And after the victory comes the cleanup strategy. Israel defeats all these different kings and takes over their cities, but they only burn one single city to the ground, Hazor.
Just the one.
And I was trying to picture why they would destroy the jewel of the region but leave everything else.
Yeah, it seems counterintuitive.
Right, so it reminds me of a hostile corporate takeover where you discover the executive board is just fundamentally corrupt and toxic.
Oh, I like this analogy.
Right, so you march in, completely dissolve the headquarters, fire the board of directors, and burn the brand name to the ground. But you quietly keep all the regional branch offices and their infrastructure intact because, Well, you still need to run a business.
That corporate buyout analogy maps perfectly onto the ancient geopolitical reality here.
Does it?
Absolutely. Hazor was the toxic headquarters. It was the absolute symbol of Canaanite oppressive power and systemic idolatry in the north.
So it had to go.
It had to go. Destroying it utterly was a definitive statement that the old power structure was permanently broken.
Wow.
And what's amazing is that archaeological excavations at the site of ancient Hazor, which is a mound called Tel El-Qaeda today, corroborate this biblical account.
No way,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah. Digging down into the strata, archaeologists found a massive, distinct layer of fiery destruction, complete with smashed statues and burned temples dating right to the 13th century BC.
That is wild. You can dig into the earth today and literally run your hands through a layer of pure ash, exactly where the text says Joshua burned the city.
Yes.
Huh.
But leaving the other hill cities intact, like you said, was a matter of sheer practicality.
Because they needed the branch offices.
Right. The Israelites were a largely nomadic people who were in the middle of a massive transition to a settled agrarian lifestyle. They didn't want to inherit a wasteland of ashes.
Yeah, they desperately needed places to live.
Exactly. They needed the resources, the localized livestock, and the intact infrastructure of those smaller hill cities just to survive the coming winter.
That makes total sense.
And the sources emphasize this wasn't arbitrary pillaging. It was total obedience to the original parameters set by Moses. Destroy the systemic corruption, but preserve the infrastructure needed for the community to thrive.
Incredible. So the coalition is shattered, the chariots are burned, and Hazor is a smoldering ruin.
Mission accomplished.
Right. But reading the chapter, the pacing feels incredibly fast. Like it reads like a movie montage.
It really does.
Scene 1, enemy gathers. Scene 2, surprise attack. Scene 3, total victory. But there is a hidden timeline in the text that completely alters how we should view this struggle.
Yeah, the narrative includes this small, easily overlooked phrase. It states that Joshua made war for a, quote, long time with all those kings.
And what does a long time actually mean in this context? I mean, are we talking months?
No, much longer. We can actually figure it out through a fascinating bit of textual detective work highlighted in the NAA study notes.
Oh, I love textual detective work.
Right, so they track the age of a specific figure, Caleb.
Okay, the spy.
Yes, Caleb was one of the original spies who explored the land years earlier. The text tells us he was exactly 40 years old when he was first sent to spy out the land at Kadesh Barnea. And we know from the broader biblical narrative that the Israelites subsequently wandered in the wilderness for 38 years.
Okay, so 40 plus 38.
Therefore, Caleb is 78 years old when they finally cross the Jordan River and begin this conquest.
Okay, so he starts the invasion at 78.
Right. Now, later in the book of Joshua, when the fighting is finally over and they are dividing up the conquered territory, Caleb explicitly states his age. He says he is 85 years old.
Oh, wow. Okay, so 85 minus the 78 years he had when they crossed the river. That leaves 7 years.
Exactly.
So this quick chapter of text actually represents 7 agonizing, brutal years of continuous ancient warfare.
It completely shatters the illusion of a quick, miraculous snap of the fingers.
It really does.
This was a prolonged, exhausting grind. I mean, imagine the immense steadfastness required for that.
Every single day.
Yeah, for over 2,000 days, the Israelite leadership had to wake up and consciously choose to rely on their faith, consistently refusing to adopt the brutal, chariot-driven military tactics of the cultures they were fighting.
That is just, wow, 7 years of looking at captured enemy weapons and choosing not to use them.
Right.
That requires a level of discipline that is just hard to fathom.
Truly.
Now, while we are looking at the realities of this long campaign, there is a complex theological concept mentioned in the text that I know often trips up modern readers.
Oh, the hardening of hearts.
Yes. The text states that it was God who, quote, hardened the hearts of these enemy kings so that they would come against Israel in battle and be destroyed.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
That sounds deeply unsettling on the surface. How do the study notes unpack the mechanics of that?
Well, it involves a very nuanced interplay between human agency and divine judgment. The sources draw a direct parallel to the story of Pharaoh in the book of Exodus.
Okay.
In ancient Near Eastern thought, the heart wasn't just the seat of emotion, It was the center of human will, logic, and decision-making.
Right, the core of who you are.
Exactly. So the hardening of hearts is not depicted as God reaching down and forcing innocent, peace-loving people to do evil against their own free will.
Okay, that's an important distinction.
Yeah, rather, it is viewed as a divine judgment on their pre-existing, entrenched stubbornness.
Ah, so they had already made their choice to embrace hostility.
Exactly. They had witnessed or heard of the power of Israel's God, yet they actively, repeatedly refused to recognize that authority or yield their own oppressive power.
They dug their heels in.
Right. And because of that sustained refusal, their hearts were hardened, essentially locking them into their chosen hostile course of action.
I see.
It solidified their arrogance, ensuring they would march out to face total defeat rather than seeking terms of peace.
Which stands in incredibly stark contrast to the city of Gibeon.
Yes, perfect example.
The Gibeonites actually looked at the situation, recognized the reality of what was happening, sued for peace, and were entirely spared.
Right, they chose differently.
But the northern kings chose pride, relying on their 200-acre megacities and their four-spoked chariots, and that pride locked them into a path of destruction.
It really highlights a core theme running throughout the sources, the profound interaction between human responsibility and divine sovereignty.
Yeah.
The kings are held entirely responsible for choosing to fight, while divine sovereignty ensures that their very resistance ultimately clears the land as promised.
Wow. And as that land is cleared, we reach the final phase of this 7-year cleanup operation, and it contains an incredible historical Easter egg.
Oh, this is one of my favorite parts.
Right. The text notes that toward the very end of this campaign, Joshua goes up into the mountains and systematically wipes out a group called the Anakim.
The Anakim.
Yeah. And for those who might not know, the Anakim were not just elite soldiers. They are described throughout the biblical text as a lineage of literal giants.
Actual giants.
These were the massive people who completely terrified the original Israelite spies decades earlier, causing them to report that they felt like mere grasshoppers in comparison.
The psychological hurdle the Anakim represented really cannot be overstated.
I can imagine.
Yeah, they were the ultimate physical manifestation of Israel's deepest fears and generational trauma.
Wow, generational trauma.
Definitely. So by systematically eradicating them from the hill country of Judah and Israel, Joshua shatters the myth of their invincibility. He removes the psychological terror that had held his people back for 40 years.
But, and this is the crazy part, he doesn't remove all of them.
No, he doesn't.
The study notes point out that he wipes them out everywhere in the mountains, but he intentionally leaves a remnant of these giants in 3 specific cities down on the coastal plain: Gaza, Ashdod, and Gath.
Yep.
He leaves a pocket of giants in Philistine territory.
And connecting this geographic detail to the broader historical timeline reveals an astonishing piece of narrative foreshadowing.
Oh, I love how this connects.
Right. By leaving a remnant of Anakim, specifically in Gath, the text is laying the historical and genetic foundation for an event that will happen centuries later.
A young shepherd boy named David is going to walk onto a battlefield in the valley of Elah and face a champion from the Philistine army.
A very famous, very large champion.
Goliath of Gath.
Exactly.
The giant that David faces didn't just materialize out of thin air. He was a direct descendant of the remnant left behind in Joshua chapter 11.
It's all connected.
Joshua dealt with the vast majority of the systemic threat. He conquered the hill country, but he left just enough of a challenge on the coastal plain for the next generation's greatest king to prove his own faith.
It's brilliant. It demonstrates that history is never just a series of isolated, disconnected events. The geographical decisions and historical realities of Joshua's day literally became the proving ground for David's day centuries later.
It's amazing, and this brings all of these ancient details right back to your doorstep.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, we've spent time unpacking Bronze Age chariot mechanics, 200-acre megacities, and literal giants. But the core mechanics of this 7-year struggle are incredibly relevant to whatever you're facing today.
They really are.
Maybe you are looking at a massive, overwhelming obstacle right now. It could be a toxic corporate culture at your job, a complex personal crisis, or, a seemingly insurmountable health issue.
A multitude like sand.
Exactly. It feels like a coalition of problems arrayed against you. When you are in that position, it is incredibly tempting to look at the people who seem to be winning, the ones utilizing cutthroat tactics,
Good.
wielding endless resources, driving the shiny new quote-unquote chariots, and think that you need to become exactly like them to survive.
But the lesson embedded in the Northern Campaign is precisely the opposite.
Yes.
Enduring security did not come from acquiring the biggest weapons or engaging the enemy on their own ruthless terms. It came from actively hamstringing those impulses. It required immense steadfastness, relying on foundational principles, and trusting a process that, frankly, defied conventional logic.
And remember the reality of that hidden timeline. It took 7 years. When you are in the muddy, exhausting middle of a struggle, it never feels like a fast-paced movie montage.
No, it feels like an endless grind.
But taking things one deliberate step at a time, staying completely true to your convictions, even if it takes years, that is how the massive 200-acre strongholds in your life are eventually dismantled.
Well said. We spent some time discussing how Joshua defeated the giants in the mountains, but left a remnant in Gath, which eventually provided the proving ground for David.
Yeah.
I think that leaves us with a fascinating, entirely new perspective to consider. What giants or challenges in your life, your family, or your industry are you intentionally leaving for the next generation to conquer?
Oh, wow.
Are we trying to fight every single battle and clear every single obstacle for those who come after us? Or are we wise enough to recognize that they will need their own proving grounds to develop their own faith and courage?
What a profound question to walk away with. Sometimes the greatest gift you can leave the next generation isn't a completely cleared field, but a giant they are equipped to face.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into history, strategy, and faith. It has been an absolute privilege unpacking this massive historical moment with you. As we wrap up today, I want to leave you with our final sign-off. God blesses all the listeners. Take care, and we will see you next time.